Hello and welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odikpo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you for joining us.
Today, the judiciary is in the spotlight. Why is that? And how can the system continue to preserve the sanctity of the judicial arm of government in Nigeria? We shall also have a discussion on the seeming gap between democratic ideals and practice in Nigeria, and how what ordinarily should be considered as imperatives translates to dividends of democracy. Elizabeth?
And of course, we all know that climate change negotiators are already gathering in Dubai for COP28, and Nigeria's participation is very important to us. So we'll be analyzing implications and benefits for participation, as well as addressing the vulnerability of some African countries on climate change adaptation.
All right, then, let's kickstart the conversation on the judiciary. I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
It's not cash transfer. It's not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate tactic.
You know, many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odikpo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
You're watching Insights, and I'd like to begin our first conversation on recent events within the Nigerian judiciary and rising perception out there in the public domain, which suggests a judiciary which may be saddled with concerns such as nepotism and corruption. Well, the judicial arm of government essentially performs the same role the world over, and that is the preservation of the rule of law, equity, and justice. I guess the question is that now in doubt in Nigeria, and how can the system ensure the sanctity of judicial craft in the country? Joining me to discuss this is Ms. Nasara Kugo Umar, barrister and advocate, public policy analyst and commentator, and a regular here on Insight. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. It's always my honor to be with you here.
It does appear like some of the recent events concerning the judiciary may be a reminder of certain things that have happened in the past. And I'm sure you remember the dust raised by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, in its report some time ago, which indicated that the judiciary is on top of the Nigerian corruption index between 2018 and 2020. We see issues arising from post-election cases being determined by the judiciary, and complaints from aggrieved parties, and then we see certain slips, whether clerical or not, on the part of the judiciary. Is there a basis for some of these allegations that you think, and should Nigerians be worried that the ICPC may have indeed opened the hornet's nest years ago, and that the situation was probably not taken as seriously as it should have been?
You are right, because what happened is monumental portrayal of disrespect to the sanctity of the judiciary. The judiciary is supposed to be the arbiter of any dispute within the country, and justice should not only be seen to be done, but should manifestly be seen to be done in any matter that comes before the judicature. Under section 14 subsection 1, democracy, in other words, the people are the custodians of the sanctity of sovereignty in Nigeria. Therefore, whatever you do and you gauge it with the perception of the people, the preponderance majority of which are not satisfied with the quality of the judgment that are coming from our judiciary, then it leaves a lot to be desired about. And apart from that, when you look at the Constitution very clearly under section 36, talking about the equality before the law, you go there in order to get justice, But in a situation whereby justice is shredded away on the altar of some considerable technicalities. In Nigeria now, it has virtually become a tradition whereby the solidity of the law is normally taken in abeyance in preference of some technical things that should be done as the basis upon which judgments are given. This thing that happens is really unacceptable, going by the sanctity of the legal profession that claims to be the only institution of the learned men and women. And at the same time, where it is expected that judiciary, or rather justice, should be the last thing a common man should expect. And then when you see these type of things and you see errors that are uncondonable, for something to happen of that magnitude, definitely it is uncondonable. Then you need to go back and find out the quality of the type of people that are adjudicating over our matters. That is one. Then number two, apart from the quality, you talk about the system itself. The system itself that allows technicality, superiority over solidity of the law. And at the same time, you look at even the method of the recruitment of those judges that are supposed to be there, vis-a-vis what is the constitutional provision regarding what factors should be considered. In those days when somebody is to be appointed as a judge, the matter, the processes will be kept surreptitiously, you know, different from him, not allowing him to know about it at all. People will go there, the security agencies will be allowed to really investigate his background, apart from his background, his etiquette, apart from etiquette, his degree of knowledge of the law, apart from the knowledge of the law, the experience, the maturity of mind, the level of his dexterity when it comes to the matters of discipline, matters of patriotism, matters of nationalism, matters of anti-corruption stand regarding the sanctity of the purity of the mind of the judge. All these factors are normally coming into play. But over the years, there are a lot of accusations regarding, say, whosoever wants to become a judge should first of all prepare himself to be anointed by somebody who is a serving judge. You cannot be a judge in your own cause. You cannot be the one to determine who will be your own successors. But in Nigeria, that appears to be the decision. You will see children of the judicial officers are the ones that are making up the list. They are brothers, they are cronies. Those that they have one affinity or the other affinity with the judicial officers are the ones that are making the list. Any society that decided to jettison competence, quality, credibility, integrity, and morality, then definitely it is a doom that we are expecting.
I mean, you've thrown up quite a bit here, and these are issues I would like to take you up on. I mean, these issues are key. You've talked about quality, you've talked about the system, and yet again you threw up the issue of, I mean, it all begins perhaps from the recruitment process.
Yes.
We'll talk about all of these, I tell you, I mean, down the line. But in talking about some of the issues that we've experienced of late within the judicial craft in Nigeria, and then we've talked about the clerical errors and all of that, there is again another issue that I consider quite germane, and I realize that upholding the rule of law and respecting the sanctity of ongoing court cases is vital to maintain public trust in the judiciary. So a situation where we have even lawyers taking out full advertorials on newspapers to make opinions on ongoing legal matters before a judge, isn't that considered a clear breach of sub judice principles? What are the repercussions for such undue interference?
Well, it's not an interference as such, because when you look at it carefully, even if matters are taken before the National Judicial Council, which is the apex body charged with the responsibility of measuring the degree of moral rectitude and other things on the execution of the judicial officers while on the bench. When you look at it, it leaves a lot to be desired. How many of them have ever been penalized? How many of them have ever been sanctioned on account of doing one wrong thing or the other over the period of years? So if you look at it, then you will not be surprised, because the failure of the NJC and indeed the judicature as a whole to be sanitizing the members and at the same time inflicting penalties on them. These are the things that have really brought it about for it to be like a It's a tradition. Whatever you do, you get away with it. Look at, for example, this very serious, unprecedented type of, professional breach, and then you call it typographical error. Which typographical error will do that? And in so many places there, the submissions are there, and then you call it typographical error. If it's just a mistake of an alphabet or a mistake under a word or just one or two, you can call them typographical errors, but not something that has to do with fundamental statements, fundamental stipulations regarding positions, regarding matters that have to do with even payment of penalties, regarding absolvance of offenses against whosoever is being accused. So all these things are decent. The important thing is that this is a torchlight that has really, lightened the directional compass of our judicial process. It is left for members of the judiciary to really think about how they can sanitize their own good image, and then how can they come back, roll the good image of those days. Remember the immediate past Supreme Court judge that left the decision, what he said. Remember too what happened last year when judges of the Supreme Court gang up against the Chief Justice of the Federation on accusations of, very serious corrupt accusations. But at the end, that thing was swept into the carpet because you have not had anything.
Can I read you something from May 2022? And this was something Justice Ejembi Eko, the retired Justice of the Supreme Court, said, when he was referencing the corruption and indiscipline, which he says pervades Nigerian judiciary. And this was in reference to, and I'm bringing this up because of what you said about the National Judicial Council.
Yes.
And this is what he said, and I would like to quote him here. He said, with all deference to the NJC, the punishment falls short of the expectation of the public that these bad eggs should have been broken or smashed or exterminated to serve as deterrent. He said, and this is quoting him as well, when the punishment for an outstanding bad and outrageous conduct is far too lenient, it encourages impunity and or repeat by others of arrant and atrocious misconduct, he ended with saying. Is it to say that there is double standards on the part of NJC in handling some of these issues, or NJC is more like it's like a bulldog without teeth or a bulldog without bites? Yeah.
No, NJC really, it has failed the expectations of the citizenry when it comes to the matters of sanitization of the judicature generally. NJC has failed, and I do not see the entire gamut of the legal profession needs very serious revolutionary sanitization. Sections 230 to 304 of the Constitution should clinically be x-rayed so that certain things should be infused there, certain things should be removed there. For example, all these political cases, it is an anathema for you to be exposing our sacred judges into all these cases. All these political cases establish election offenses court, establish it as a court of independence, as a court of summary trial where you will go within a period of 4 weeks, maximum 6 weeks, you give judgment, as a court whereby you bar the possibility of having any appeal they are going into regular courts. Let the regular court be discharging their own decision. All these things that have to do with the governmental something, bureaucracy, all these things that have to do with matters of corruption, establish an anti-corruption court, let it be the one to be dealing with that. And let, including the judges of the Supreme Court, let them fall within the jurisdiction of this particular court. Let it be an independent court of itself, and there will not be room for appeal. There are many things that requires to be done there to sanitize the decision. For example, judiciary, even the Supreme Court itself. When you look at the Supreme Court there are virtually, I think, only 2 courtrooms there in the Supreme Court. Courtrooms for appeals that will come up with various, look at the number of the high courts we are having. You have almost 1,000 high courts. Their appeals there goes to the Court of Appeal, the 6 judicial divisions of the Court of Appeal, and then from there they come to the Supreme Court. At the end, you will discover congestion of cases because there are so many diversionary things. Any matter that involves government, any matter that is political, any celebrated corruption matter, the end road of it is the Supreme Court. By the time they are concentrating in that, you will discover it will be almost impossible for you to file a case and get it listed within a period of 20 years because of the congestion of regular cases there, because the attention of the judges there is more on this type of cases that are this. Therefore, the Supreme Court, to my opinion, should be unbundled, either in two ways. Either you unbundle it, all the common law subjects, you should have Supreme Court of Commercial Law, Supreme Court of Criminal Matters, Supreme Court of Constitutional Matters, Supreme Court of Land Law, Supreme Court of Customs and Tradition, Supreme Court of Marriage and Divorce. You have Supreme Courts like this separated, so on the basis of which any matter that comes should straight ahead go to that court. And then the government should be prepared to recruit more judges to really take care of this adequacy. The second option is that decentralize the Supreme Court. Let there be Supreme Court's division, judicial divisions, just like the Court of Appeal, whereby matters can be dispensed with there and there. But even if you do that one, you need to insulate the Supreme Court away from handling corruption matters, from handling politically related matters. For example, like I said, political offenses court should be established, anti-corruption court should be established, court should be established against all these bandits and criminalities that are really pervading the length and breadth of the country. There should be a court for trial of anti-terrorism court. You should establish it. Then miscellaneous offenses court. By the time you establish these independent courts, then you will give the latitude for the Supreme Court to really concentrate on the basic things that will be coming on appeal based on the demand of the citizenry from the Court of Appeal upwards. But over and above that, the temperament, the mindset, the discipline, the morality, and the nationalistic stand of the judicial officers should be recalibrated. Those that are really not up to the expectation should be booted out, so that competent technocrat, competent legal minds that are really interested in developing the judiciary, interested in making landmarks. There were judges, for example, in the 70s, when you remember them, those that gives landmark judgments that are prepared to even move rocks. Those are the type of quality people that should be brought back, so that the good image of the judiciary should be restored.
And the independence of the judiciary as
the
well.
Independence, I don't so much believe that judiciary should be given absolute independence. Because the independence is
isn't that what the NJC is doing? Having some supervisory, it has some supervisory role.
The independence is one of those reasons why corruption is really having its way into the judicature. It is because of the independence. But where they know that up there they are responsible, they are to subject themselves to some scrutinies or some critical bodies, that DSS is to scrutinize them, the EFCC is to scrutinize them, and they are to be penalized whenever they are found on wrongdoing. So I don't support absolute independence of the judiciary. There should be some checks and balances whereby those that are not meeting the expectations really should be booted out. There should be periodic disciplinary inspection regarding the conduct of the judicial officers in Nigeria.
In fact, you've preempted every question I wanted to ask. I did say we were going to talk about the issue of quality, system and recruitment, and you've answered the question. I wanted us to talk about efficiency and effectiveness of the NJC in responding to public complaints. You've also efficiently and effectively done
because
that.
The NJC is made up of the same members. Nemo Judas and Kausasua is an internationally recognized principle of law. You cannot be a judge in your own cause. So why should they be the ones to be adjudicating over their misconduct? It's wrong.
This is an ongoing conversation. I mean, the sanctity of the judiciary is key to the survival of our democracy. And I mean, this is a conversation that, I mean, we'll put on the front burner, and we will continue to push. I mean, Nasra Umar Okugo, I would like to thank you so much. Barrister, advocate, public policy analyst, and commentator. I mean, a friend of the house. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on Insight.
It's always my honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Well, for most people, the issue is not how the Nigerian political system operates within a framework of a federal presidential representative democratic republic, where, of course, executive power is exercised by the government. For a greater number of the masses, the issue, it would seem, is how a greater majority of Nigerians may not be enjoying the imperatives of democracy as well as its dividends, especially when juxtaposed against what the political class enjoys as benefits accruing from their elevated positions in power. Well, that is what is up for discussion, and my guest is Idris Miliki, Executive Director, Conscience for Human Rights and Conflict Resolution. Welcome to Insight, sir, and glad you could join us.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so I just gave you like a synopsis of what we intend to discuss, and most people would ordinarily and readily agree that the ultimate test of the value of a political system is whether it helps that society to establish conditions that improve the standard of living for the majority of its people. I talked about China, or China, stands out as an example. It does not practice democracy, but to a large extent, it's one of the most developed countries of the world. So democracy is an ideology, most people would say. In your response to these issues of what I've thrown up, can you speak to, or in your opinion, what do you think determines what the imperatives for democracy are, and what the dividends of democracy should translate to? And who determines what and who does what? The government or the people?
Yeah, thank you. I think democracy can be defined by the process that brought in leadership or representatives. How participatory, inclusive is the process itself. If few persons sit down, even at traditional level, we may not know that there are democracy there, before people still vote so that a leader could emerge. Where you have more than 1-2 persons and somebody is to lead, the process that brought in that leadership is what can be described as democracy. True. But if you look at it from the governance angle, from the politics angle, which is what makes many of our people to think that when you talk of democracy, you think people have to queue on the street and go and exercise their right through the ballot box. That is just one myth. Even the China that we have also expressed yourself there, well, I don't know whether you also know the fact that even the Mao philosophy is also democratic. It's about the process of selection. It's about process of leadership.
It is, and I agree with you there.
Yes.
But in this case, it is not the people who determine the leaders in China, for instance.
Who determine the leaders?
It's the party. It's the party.
Yeah. The parties also make up of people. It's about the organization that you subscribe to. No matter the nomenclature we are trying to use, it's about that human beings sit down somewhere and then form a party, like-minded people form an organization, and now come out with a process to say this is how our own leaders will emerge. You can also know the fact that even if you look at the history of parliament that started in the UK several years ago, you also find that at a particular time, there was no parliamentary aspect of governance. But for people to have a way of dividing responsibility so that a process can emerge and the check and balances, that is why you have the parliament today. So when you look at dividends of democracy,
yes,
why many citizens don't enjoy dividends of democracy from their passive leaders or representatives is about they were not part of the process that brought them into power. Okay. And that is one thing, because there is no check and balances. When you look at how governors emerge, how presidents emerge, how local government emerge, and even in several other associations where money is a determining factor, that what do we do now? They have given us money, we go there to vote. When the person gets to that power, he or she does what he likes, and not what even the organization that brought that person into power. If you look at the political party system in Nigeria, for instance, how does party emerge? Who are those people who form the party? Who are the membership of the party? And how does the party themselves subscribe to the organization which they thought they believe in? But 1 or 2 persons pay for dues, you are going for conventions. 1 or 2 persons put it in accommodation. So you don't have a say. So when such a person emerges, he's no longer looking at you as part of the process that brought him or her to power. So he decides what he or she wants to do for you and not what you want. Of course, leaders of government have priorities, but what about the need of the people? What about the need of the followers? I think that is what is called is a issue of this issue of dividend of democracy.
So I hear you, and sorry to interject, but I hear you. Does your analysis, or it will seem that your analysis aligns with the argument that what should actually constitute the basis for determining democratic dividend must be based on the extent to which power is being exercised by the people, and through the ability to elect those that will govern them, and the ability to affect the different programs and policies of government, maybe through active involvement in decision making as well. Does that align? Does that align with your analysis earlier?
Yeah, that is simple thing is the fact that you are asking for a mandate. Who give you mandate? You cannot give yourself mandate. So you must be able to marry the needs of the people that give you mandate and your priority. No matter how you think you know it all, somebody is there around you who also, even if you are a class monitor, you are a leader at that level. What is the process that brought you to the leadership position? You must listen to those who are there to say, look, we want you to lead us. And this is how we want you to lead us. This is what we want from you. And as long as you protect that covenant, that agreement between the two of you, or the other group of persons, they will enjoy the dividend of democracy. It is not about sharing money that you enjoy the dividend of democracy. As you are coming in to ask for our mandate, did you tell us this is what and what you intend to do? Or what, do you ask us what and what do you want you to do for us? Because you are just a facilitator. In that particular, anybody can be there. For the period you are going to facilitate leadership and governance and representative, you must always fall back to those who put you there as their leader, as their representative, so that they can be able to say, oh, we have put somebody who we think can defend our interests, can promote our interests. And in that process, they enjoy the dividends of democracy if their interests are adequately protected.
Oh, okay, I mean, let's draw a bit of distinction between dividends and imperatives, because there are certain things required of government. I actually understand the paradox of democracy, and I'm sure, like most Nigerians, you clearly do. I don't know, but I happened on Terry Andrews' Odysseus' fallacy of Western democracy in Nigeria recently, and it was an interesting read for me. I wonder how many of our political elites align with these thoughts in that book. It is centered on the presumption that is rooted in the belief that dividends of democracy naturally, is naturally taken for granted in entrenched democracies, more advanced democracies. But it is made into a show, yeah. Some political experts have described it as electoralism, an evolving concept where elections are the main focus for the political class rather than service in the true sense of public engagement. Is this something you align with?
Well, you see, I will always want to refer you to a process. Because whether I talk dividends of democracy, emergence of leadership, and whether through ballot or selection, it's about the people around. It's about human beings who want somebody to lead them. And then what mandate do they give you? And what mandate did you seek for? And I think to me that is very, very important. When you look at the environment here, even you look at, if you take it spiritually, it's the same Quran and the same Bible that is obtainable in Saudi Arabia, Israel, and all over the world. But the environment is different. The situation is different.
So why in our case, and this is the argument, and I get what you're saying, but why is it in our case, it will seem, and that this is the argument, and this is what a lot of people are saying, that rather than focus on the needs of the many, we're seeing a situation where our democracy focuses on the needs of a few, and that is the political elite. And that is an argument that is being pushed out there.
It's because it is the few that also determine who govern them. If you look at those who sit down in a political party before the primaries, how does the candidate emerge on himself? It is the caucus in the night that determine and say, this is our candidate. This is the person I am going for. We have seen several godfathers and godmothers that are determined to tell you, we have witnessed it at various levels. This is our candidate. Everybody now queue in that particular contest. So how do you now come in to now assess or prove that person? So it is the few that determine who governs the majority. It is no longer majority that determine. It's another that people say that the majority will always have their way, while the minority will have their say.
And that is one of the paradox of democracy.
It is no longer the issue. It is the few who determine for the majority, and there's nothing the majority could do. There's nothing the majority could say, because when you look at the resources attached to election, for instance, we just had off-cycle election in Kogi State, in Bayelsa State, in Imo, and we are part of the process. We are observers in the field, and we can see it. Look at how party members were not happy with the way and manner their candidate emerged, and they left the party. We look at how, at the end of the day, they went away and joined another party. It is what we are saying. If the majority of the party determine the process and then a leader emerge, everybody will now subscribe to it and say, this is our leader. But where the few sat down somewhere in the name of party leaders, in the name of organizational leaders, in the name of caucusing, in the name of resources, that after all, how much did you contribute? Or we are the owner of this party. You came to join us yesterday. But everybody has the same vote. On election day, a professor and a local farmer have the same power of vote. So the only difference we have about these two persons is the fact that you don't need to tell a professor how to vote, but you need to educate a local farmer on how the ballot and the logo of your party. That is the difference that we have. It is no longer the majority that determines, it is now the minority that determines for the majority.
But since we're on the subject of ideals versus practice, I mean, how do we now flip the coin? I mean, if this were a coin, that means...
it is at the formative level.
Okay.
When some of us who are young and are students, you can see what has befallen now today, or other young organizations. And when you look at how many persons pay for party dues today, how many people organize, even professional associations like NUJ and other NBA, unless you make it compulsory, people just want to come to convention and congresses and enjoy the dividends at that level.
But that is for party membership now, because
it is the party that produced the candidate.
Okay.
And it is the candidate that all of us who are not members of the party are being forced to and vote for the election day.
I get.
So in that context now, the ideal situation is that majority of the party members should determine and decide who lead and represent the party in the first instance, because Supreme Court have said the vote belongs to the party. But who determine, who decide, who emerge as the candidate of the party? So now with the majority now, who goes to vote on election day, rightly or wrongly, for whatever reason best known to us, we are not part of the determining factor. How many persons are registered member of political party compared to those who go to vote on election day? These are the simple things that we are saying.
True.
Let the majority determine for everybody, and not the few that are now determined for the majority in this context. So the majority are no longer having their way. It is the minority that are having their way. That is the system that we have found ourselves today within the context of democracy that we are practicing in Nigeria, as it were.
You know, talking about system, and I know you and I have discussed former President Olusegun Obasanjo's assertion of, on the nature and structure of our democracy. I get your reservation based on the messenger, but do you think we should, I do not think, and I know maybe you also do not think so, but I do not think we should discountenance the message, no matter where or who the messenger is. Shouldn't Africa, in fact, shouldn't Nigeria evolve a democratic style that meets the collective aspiration of most of its people, rather than that select advantaged political class, that few that you've talked about, that even within the party structure determines who should be the candidates, and now the masses are forced to choose between candidates evolved by these parties? What structure now, taking a cue from what former President Olusegun Obasanjo has said, can begin to throw up...
You see, my brother, the unfortunate thing is those who benefited from a system will come to denounce that system. We cannot reform democracy.
Let's not talk about the messenger.
No, I'm coming now. Yes, the message is the fact that we cannot reorganize. You cannot organize properly democracy without first of all reorganize our party system. Okay. What motivates people to go and join political parties? And then when you get there, you are not happy, you move the second day. This is the important thing. Before you join the party, do you have the manifesto? Do you read the constitution of the party? Do you know the ideology? I have been to several political party offices at state level in Kogi State. They don't even have the manifesto in their own offices. So how do you regulate that? Why am I in this party? That the constitution says clearly that INEC, for instance, they must have the manifesto and the constitutions of the party. It is on their website. Again, the candidate must also come out with his or her own manifesto, which must be located within the constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. But do we have this at all? People come and tell you, I have 1-point agenda, I have 20-point agenda. Is it located within the party structure? Does the party have? Can you take up what happened in South Africa, where a sitting president have 9 months to go, and the party sat and said, look, rightly or wrongly, you must resign, and the party resigned. Is that not something we should copy? That is collectivism. That is participatory. And in decision making, nobody, either an individual or country, can live in an island. Nobody can come and tell us the African is unique and we must develop an African thing. You must conduct research. What happened yesterday? Where are we today? And where do we want to get to? We must borrow from other places. True. The constitution we are operating today was also borrowed from advanced country. Even the food we eat. Even people are now marrying, they have foreign spouse. Talk more of foreign idea. So it's about, we want to learn from others. It's about interest and value. So if the value we copy from a particular country, suit our own, we should continue with it. If it doesn't go, we pick what is good there and throw away what is not good. It is not every mango that drop that we pick you select the one that you think is good for you. But we cannot throw away the baby with bad water. That is what we are saying. So let our leaders sit down with the young people and the process for emerging of leadership. That is why I have advocated, and I will advocate for this opportunity for the young person in Nigeria to be voted for and can vote at the age of 18. The constitution must be amended to read, at the age of 18, you can go and vote and you must be voted for. Why should I be 20 years old and I go to vote for a 70-year-old person, and a 70-year-old person cannot vote for me at the age of 20? That is a constitutional lacuna. That is discriminatory, and I have not helped the young person to be able to realize their leadership aspiration. That is part of the thing we need to look into. That is what is very important.
I hear you, and I hear you clearly.
Yes.
Just before I let you go, and I mean this is finally because my director is asking me to round off our conversation. You made references to the Constitution, and I'd like for you to just talk slightly a bit about the state of our union and the essence of our federalism and democracy in the service of governance. Do you think that we may need to also rejig our federalism, since you raised the issue of constitutional amendment, as some have posited over the decades now, and perhaps devolve more powers to the states? And maybe also, that way people at the grassroots may feel governance and government's presence more, and have greater responsibility to government as well.
You see, the danger we face today in this country were the lack of democracies at the other tiers of government, like local government. For instance, the obstacle election that have just been concluded, INEC comply with the Constitution by giving us 1 year notice and come out with a program of 1 year times table. But make I tell you today, before man and God, on the 14th of next month, the tenure of local government council in Kogi State will expire. The persons that is now outgoing have refused to put the machinery in place to conduct election as against the constitutional provision. When you have a lot happening at federal level and at state level, democracy is being destroyed. At local government level, across the federation, across board, that elections are not conducted. How do you now be able to enjoy democracy at the ward level, at the local government level? So the state government, we need to amend the constitution, and that is why all effort of the National Assembly to get local government autonomy have been destroyed and consistently being destroyed by the character that find themselves in position of governance at state level. Why should, if the INEC have not come out with times table to conduct election, to the all-circle election, it is the same governors that will go to court to challenge INEC. Why did they fail and fail woefully to develop democracy at the local government level by the same governor that are beneficiary of democracy at state level? That is just the fundamental thing that we are saying. So we must continue to reorganize and make sure that we devolve power to the local government, so that ordinary person, councillor, can go there. The young person can easily become a councillor. A woman can become easily a councillor at that level and get empowered. How many person can become a senator? How many person can become a governor? So we must be able to see that effort must be done consistently to make sure that the autonomy of the local government must not be compromised. The president is from a local government. Yes. The governor is from a local government, and every other person are from local government. Why is it that the governors in Nigeria are destroying local government system in our very faith? We reject that, and we reject it fundamentally.
Idris Miliki, I would like to add here that he's not just the executive director, he is the vibrant executive director, Conscience for Human Rights and Conflict Resolution. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on Insight.
Yeah, thanks to NTA too.
I mean, it's been a pleasure having you here. Yeah. I mean, I would like to bring you back here sometime real soon so we can continue this conversation. Thank you so much indeed for coming on our program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Elizabeth Famori is up next.
The 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference, also referred to as COP28, will hold at the Expo City, Dubai. The conference is intended for governments to agree on policies to limit global temperature rises and adapt to impacts associated with climate change. Nigeria's participation at the conference is expected to aid effective utilization of $100 billion loss and damage funding through implementation, while seeking increased climate action and equitable climate finance distribution, amongst other issues. Today, we will analyze the importance of Nigeria's participation at COP28, and my guest is Sam Onibu, and he is a board member, NEDC. He's also a climate action advocate. Mr. Nigbo, thank you so much for joining us on Insight today.
Thank you very much indeed for having me.
All right, and at this point, I have to mention that Mr. Sam actually sponsored the Climate Change Act in 2021 while in the 9th Assembly. So let's begin with an assessment of the journey on climate matters. How far have we gone?
Thank you. I think it is fair to say that we have made progress in that, for instance, you pointed out that we have a Climate Change Act now for Nigeria, which was passed in 2021 after about being in the House or in National Assembly for around 16 years. Because from what I heard from the directors in the Department of Climate Change or Ministry of Environment, they said they started conversations on this issue of climate change about the 5th Assembly. But the first bill was moved in the 6th Assembly, and then another bill was moved in the 7th Assembly. Each one failed. And then before I first sponsored it in the 8th Assembly, it also failed. And finally, I sponsored it, and we were able to get it passed, talking about the 9th Assembly. So in terms of what we've been able to do, through the provisions of that act, the federal government of Nigeria has established the National Council on Climate Change, which is now the main body that is coordinating issues concerning climate change around the nation. But what is significant about the body is that it is chaired, the National Council is chaired by Mr. President, and in his absence, the Vice President. But it has ministers from different ministries, so many of them. Power, transportation, petroleum, water resources, women affairs, so many of the environment, agriculture, just like that. And also we have the National Security Advisor as a member. And of course, to capture the sub-nationals, we have the chairman of the Governors Forum, as well as the president of the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria. In addition to that, we have the private sector, being represented, from Manufacturers Association or whatever nominations they're able to bring in. And then we have representatives from the civil society organization. And we have women in their special recognition, youths, and disabled. So it's a fairly comprehensive act. But what it has done is that it has actually charted a clear course. Now as we are preparing, to go for COP, so many things have been happening, and Nigeria has been recognized in different ways. Recently, without taking personal credit, I was recognized as one of the 30 global leaders on climate change. And it is a product and recognition of what the National Assembly of Nigeria was able to do with that act that so many other jurisdictions have now copied. So things have been clearly outlined. Unfortunately, the Vice President and the President, they are on top of this game, because I was told last time that he set up an ad hoc committee to be able to really coordinate what we are taking to COP, so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to check what we are coming back with as a nation. But it's important also to mention, talking about achievements, that the 36th Ordinary Session of Africa Union resolved that we were going to have Africa Climate Summit, which held in Nairobi,
yes,
where AU adopted certain positions to make sure that Africa speaks with one voice. So in terms of progress, we have made some progress, regarding the issues of climate change.
All right, let me quickly take you on our focus at COP20 this time around, and then I'm going to be taking you back to COP27, where securing funds to implement energy transition plan was launched, and raising additional finance based on the $100 billion pledge made by the Global North in 2009 to support mitigation and adaptation in developing countries. How do we achieve this now that we are heading to COP28?
Well, thank you very much for that very important question. Everything about COP, again, we don't want to go into the history of the evolution of climate change. Everything about COP has been gradual, it's been progressing, and that's why I said we have made some modest achievements. You recall that in 2015, during COP21, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change was adopted. The former president was there. I was lucky to be there also. And eventually, nations started signing up. From April of 2016, we signed our own on the 22nd of September 2016 at the UN headquarters. That's when the former president signed. I was also lucky to be there. So what we are saying now is that everything about it has been gradual. You refer to the 100 billion that was $100 billion that was promised by the global north to help us address some of the effects of climate change, and whether we've made any progress. Well, I think part of the money that has come in trickles. We have not received money that is commensurate with the impact that we are getting from the global emitters. And the money has not also come in block to help us address all these developing nations, the adverse, impact of climate change on them. So that's probably why during COP27, you were talking about what happened there. During COP27 at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, the developing world came up with the issue of loss and damage to be able to hold, the global north down and get specific results, not just to go and discuss and go out and go back without positive results. So that one is being pushed, is being pursued. How to operationalize it, how to put it into effect and all that. All these things are going on. And I think they had, those who are negotiators for us, I think they had a meeting early part of this month to be able to take a position. I understand that the developed world, led by the US, they're still insisting that we have this money domiciled within the World Bank for the time being as an interim measure, because the developing world is asking that, especially organ be set up so that we don't face the hard conditions that institutions like World Bank and IMF put up when you want to access funds. So I think there is progress. As we go down, I'm sure that we'll make further progress, on how to get it working. So progress is being made, but these are modest, progress that we are making, but we are moving towards a direction.
So what's the direction? Yeah. All right, Nigeria is also concerned with the issue of using gas as a transition fuel, and also the loss and damage fund, which was agreed on at the last COP. Where are we in this journey of transiting?
You can see, it's easy to see that we as a nation, we're a fossil fuel-based economy. I spoke on this very strongly when we were having an event at the Scottish Parliament during COP 26 in 2021. And I said that, yes, we are working to transit. We have more of gas than oil. We are working to transit into net zero and all that. You remember that the former president made a presidential declaration about Nigeria transiting to net zero in 2060. Even though, in actual fact, what we have in our law or in the act is between 2050 to 2070. Actually, had made that declaration before he signed the law. So we are working towards that. And we also said, and I remember I said so, that we are not going to transit into crisis. Okay. So we are going to use the gas that we have in abundance, using it side by side as we are transiting, so that we do not transit into crisis. Again, I have said, and I even wrote an article on that we have to begin the process of transiting. Why? The developed nations, particularly China, United States, even India and European countries, they are rapidly transiting, which means there will be less demand for fossil fuel. And since these are major markets, so we have to begin our own process of transiting. Otherwise, at the end of the day, or in the next maybe less than 20, 30 years, we will probably end up having our fuel without anybody, having commensurate demand for it. So that's why it is important that we key into this. We want to use gas and then transit, and that is being done. And I'm happy that we have those major gas projects from Ajukuta going up to down up north to Kaduna and Kano, and maybe even beyond there. And then there are other projects that are ongoing. And the federal government is doing everything humanly possible to ensure that the price of cooking gas is less. They're working on that. And then we will eventually transit and make sure we have access to clean cooking. Because if you check the records, you find that over 600 million Africans as a whole do not have access to electricity. And out of that, Nigeria has about 90 million. Oh. And then you have over 970 million Africans not having access to clean cooking. So there's market for people who want to invest in our transition. And we are always using every opportunity, every available opportunity to invite them. I did that at the Scottish Parliament in 2021. I also did it during the African Climate Summit at the National Assembly of Kenya to say, take this opportunity so that you don't make the mistake or the mistakes that they made when we changed or privatized from NITEL to telecoms. You saw those who did not want to come along then. Today they are regretting. So there's a ready market. There's an incentive with the population that do not have access to either electricity or clean cooking. So we're inviting people to participate, especially the industrialized ones. And these are part of the things that we are likely to talk about very strongly as we go for this COP28. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the vulnerability of some African countries. How do we operationalize the loss and damage fund to support countries that are actually vulnerable to climate change? Because some have not even started at all.
Yeah, it's important. I'm happy that the conversations around climate change have indeed increased. I remember when I was appointed to chair the House Committee on Climate Change in 2015, and I would call for interactive sessions, bringing people from different sectors to come to the House of Reps to tell us their positions. It was difficult, to see people talk about this. So between then and now, there has been high level of awareness. But if you are talking about the challenges that African countries are having with this, well, let's state that we are one of the lowest emitters. If you're talking about continental contributions to global emission, Africa emits less than 4%. Yet, the impacts of climate change, the negative effects of climate change, are felt more here because we are not prepared. We haven't prepared to be able to really, absorb the shocks coming, either from desertification or flood or the kind of problems that we have around Mozambique, Malawi, and the rest of the parts of Africa. The reason is because we have not prepared. But again, this is the reason why we're talking about one voice. When at the Africa Climate Summit, the heads of states and governments of Africa and other international organizations, including regional bodies like ECOWAS, met, they decided that we must take a position. And that position is that we are going to transit, but that we need resources to help Africa to absorb these shocks. Because, like you said, and I concur with you, we are more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change than the developed world, because they have known all these things and they've been preparing for them over the years. Imagine the instance I cited, how long it took the National Assembly to be able to pass a climate change act. It was not the fault of the National Assembly. A lot of it was coming from the executive, because a lot of those bills, after being passed by the National Assembly, were shut down. So awareness is important. Yeah. And that's why in making the act on climate change, we made it to cut across the board from the national level to the state level to the local government level to the private sector. And by so doing, all hands must be on deck. Whether here in Nigeria, I mentioned there that a few jurisdictions, both in Africa here and beyond, they have looked at our act and they've copied it. So if we form our positions and they are strong, whether as Nigeria or as a neighboring country, and we follow these things religiously and create the needed awareness, in the communities, the traditional rulers, all these people will be able to prepare.
Happy you said we are prepared, but it's also good to know that you're also part of those who will be making representation at COP28. But for the take home after COP28, are we going to be having adoptable action plans to drive this course?
Yeah, I mentioned here earlier that we'll pursue issues, our energy transition plan, how we are going to meet some of the NDCs that we can handle individually, nationally, to help us in the growth of our GDP. These things we take one by one and then engage in bilateral discussions that will benefit us. And of course, like I said, some of us in our modest, lowly positions have been talking about inviting the developed world to take advantage of massive market that we have both in Nigeria and Africa as a continent. These discussions will continue, and I have no doubt whatsoever that they will bear great fruits.
All right, Mr. Sam Onigbo, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Insight today. Thank you for your thoughts, and we hope to have positive feedback from COP28. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And that's it on this episode of the program. Do join us same time for more on Insight. My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.